Hi, this is Betty. I'm interviewing a woman today. Her name is June Shapiro. And I met her at a party. Actually, I met her at a party. We were watching the end of the New York City Marathon, and it was fun, and everyone was chatting and so forth. And she was by far the most interesting woman or person in the room. And then we became friends and we would meet and have dinner. And I became more and more enthralled with her story, with her ethics, with how she loves the ballet, how she loves music, how she's taught herself almost everything. And she's also shared that with a lot of women. She's helped them educate themselves. So you're going to listen to June Shapiro and you're going to enjoy it and pass it on to somebody else. She's that person that people write books about. And that's how I feel about June Shapiro. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this. I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. Her name is June Shapiro, and we went to a party, and I said, fell in love. I met just somebody that I became my friend and for all times. And the more I know June Shapiro, I just want you to know the more fascinated I am with her. And I want you to know about June. So, hi, June. How are
Hi
you?
there. I am fine. I'm very excited about talking to you.
Thank you. How do you like us doing Zoom, June? I think it's pretty great.
I think it's a wonderful way of coping with the world today, and it's a great thing. Do you know that my grandfather died in the 1918 flu thing? And
Really?
I've often thought about him in the last few weeks. He had no entertainment, not even a radio then.
Oh.
You know, if you were confined, what would you do?
Not he had no entertainment of any kind.
In those days, no.
And he was
a coal miner, and so they certainly couldn't afford any fine things.
How they beat themselves up, huh? Going down in the mines.
Absolutely. I mean, he also had black lung disease. My grandmother, who had worked in a cotton factory, had white lung disease.
And I didn't know there was such a thing.
Yes, the cotton fibers.
Oh, no.
Yes. So, it was a difficult time. As difficult as life is today, I'm sure it was much more difficult for them.
Much more difficult.
And I think that my mother certainly had very different ideas about what she wanted for her children. I think the main thing she thought about was that they would be fed. That was the fed, because she as a child wasn't fed much. And so that she always did. So I think she accomplished what she wanted in her life.
Well, since you said that way, she accomplished what she wanted, and that's what she wanted in her life. I want to talk to you because you told me a story about your education and you. And I would like you to share with our listeners a story that a lot of them might not know anything about. And I think it's important.
Well, she may have worried about feeding me, but she and my father absolutely thought that girls shouldn't go to college. So even though I was valedictorian in my elementary school and in my junior high, they absolutely would not let me go. They felt you should just become a secretary, and that was what life was for a woman. And it was strange. I accepted that. I really didn't protest very much, but after I had a terrible time in high school because I was so lonely. The people I met in the vocational courses were not really very interesting people, and they had very different goals than I had. So I graduated, I got a job, and I began to feel I was really stupid. I didn't know anything. I felt as though my world had been so limited. And I decided I know what I'll do because college was free at that time. Not only the college, but we got our books for $5 a course. So I went, took my records to Hunter, and the first woman who saw me said, "My dear, you don't belong in a college. You belong in a high school." Well, I gathered myself up and
Oh,
I went out. I went out in the stairway and I cried and cried and cried. Went back to work the next day. And by the second day, I said, "Now, wait a minute. There's more than one admissions officer. You can't give up so fast."
oh, June.
So I decided I ought to talk a little more. I ought to tell her, about my high school. The other one had just kind of frightened me so much, but I went to her and I talked to her about, that I was valedictorian, about my father. And she said, "Well, you really have a terrible record, but I just have a feeling about you. And now you're going to have to make up an awful lot of courses, but
Oh my God.
I think I'll give you a try. Why don't you come for a year? You have to pay. Um, and we'll see." And the first term,
So you were going to have a full-time job and go at night.
that's right.
Okay.
And I got all A's my first term. And I went back to see her and she said, "You're in." I've often thought about all the women in my life who have done so much for me. Those teachers in my elementary school who had such faith in me, and this woman. And I feel so sorry that I'm not able to go back and thank them. By the time I thought of doing it, they would have all been dead by then, I guess. But anyhow, so I I went to school at night. It took me 11 years.
So you had a full-time job
This
and you went how many nights a week? Just curious.
two. I earned between 8 and 9 points a year, but I had all those courses to make up. I had to take 8 terms of French and Spanish, and that is a subject. Although foreign languages they're not my field. But what was wonderful about college was I learned so many things I didn't know about. I mean, I just had no idea that those things existed in the world. And they made me take, I think, every 101 course that existed. And I'm so grateful for it. There are so many things that I owe to college. Like, I'm so fascinated with geology, and I'm so fascinated with the history of the English language. I took a wonderful course on that. And I'm lucky because I have friends who like to talk about those things. And what else? I took physics. And
Really?
yes,
Everything.
took sociology, political science, economics, everything it seems. But I loved it. The whole time I went, I loved it. It was so fascinating, and the world opened up. And when I graduated, I became a teacher, and I worked for not very long, maybe 4 or 5 years as a teacher, and then I had a baby. In those days, you had to quit teaching, or at least take a leave.
You couldn't be pregnant, right?
No, as a matter of fact, you were supposed to leave after 4 months, but I lied, and I didn't look so big, so I stayed until 7 months, and then I had to go back and be very surprised that I had a baby so early.
Right.
But and then so I stayed home, and then for almost 3 years, and then one day I was playing with my daughter, and I was trying to read the newspaper and it was on the floor, and she came over and stamped on the newspaper, and I got the message. So I stopped and I started talking to her, and then it was as though I sat across the room and I was looking at myself sitting in this chair that swiveled with my mouth hanging open. And I thought, oh, I got to get a job. I can't do this anymore.
Right.
Well, the next day I went to the Ford dealership and I met a friend and I told her about this terrible experience I had and that I had to get a job. And she said, well, I supervise students at NYU. I'll see what I can do. Meanwhile, why don't you call Hofstra, which was a nearby college,
Sure.
and apply? And I said, oh, that's a good idea. And then again, another woman who really meant something in my life. 3 days later, she called me. She said, did you write?
Did she?
Yes. And
Wow.
I mean, if she hadn't done that, I probably would have gone on saying, anyhow, so I did write and I got the job right away. And I did that for 40 years. I loved it.
What was the job?
I was a supervisor of student teaching, and I so well remembered my first year of teaching. And I really felt that I could really tell them things that you had to be careful about in the first year, like the coffee pot in the teacher's room. Don't do it without asking. You just don't know the whole society in the room. So, I mean, that's very trivial, but there were a lot better things that I said than that. Right. But nevertheless, I did it. And as a matter of fact, one of the students I had now, she was one of my last students before I retired. I retired because I began to get very annoyed with the kind of education that was happening, where everything was passing tests and not really feeling the children and really seeing them as little people who have problems too. So this friend of mine now, she was one of my last student teachers, and she and I are very good friends. As a matter of fact, I'm going to perform the wedding ceremony on her next. Well, we were going to do it last week, as a matter of fact, but because of the virus, she moved it to next year. So I'm going to get all dressed up and I'm going to marry. But anyhow, there was one other thing I wanted to tell you about education. And that was, as I moved along, I began to feel that they changed the policies in New York, and now you had to pay for going to college at Hunter. And that really bothered me so much. I mean, I knew the struggles I had. And so I decided that I would give 10 scholarships, partial scholarships a year. And the people at Hunter.
Yeah. Wait, you said you would give other people.
That's right.
Copay. What they
Yes.
had to pay for the education.
Sure. I mean, I gave them a certain amount of money, which would help them pay for the Hunter.
Did you know students? Did you know?
No. And then the administrator in the building asked me if I would come up and talk to the students that I had given the scholarship. And she gathered them all together. They gave me thank you cards and all that. And then I told them about my struggles, and it seemed to release something in them. Each one of them told me how hard it was for them to be going to Hunter night school. These were all night school students. And my heart just went out. I really felt, I was doing something so good. I was kind of paying back for the fact that I had a free education.
You were paying again. So when you went to Hunter, it was free. If you were a New York City or New York State resident, it was
Well,
free.
I think it was only New York City.
And that was free.
That was free.
And then when did it become not free?
I think, although I don't want to swear, but it seems to me it was during Giuliani's mayor ballot. He said, there are so many people who are going to college who take more than 6 years, and it's not worth. And I felt like calling him and saying, I worked and I went for 11 years, and now I have my doctorate. And, yes, I mean, I was worth it. I really was. And so, and my life now is so influenced by that. I took the music courses, the art courses, and now I am so involved in opera and the ballet and going to museums. I don't think I ever would have done that if I hadn't gone to college.
Having been introduced to it by the school.
That's right. I mean, it just opened the world up to me. And it also changed my attitude. I used to think of myself. Let me say this: my very wise granddaughter once said to me, "Well, we're I can't remember
Take your time.
outgoing, shy people." And I can't remember the term for it.
Introverts, extroverts.
That's right. She said we're extroverted introverts.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so wonderful for a teenager to say something like that. And yes, that's me. And it's as though at one time I felt that I really wasn't good enough to be friendly with the people who I thought were wonderful. And then I realized, generally speaking, if I like someone, the chances are that they like me, because I wouldn't like them if they didn't like me.
Right.
And so even when I met you,
Yeah.
it was, you seemed so alive and so interested in what I had to say. How could you must have liked me, and so we got together, and that's how I have acquired most of my friends. But I think part of it is that I do feel that you have to go out into the world. You have to risk things. You have to expose yourself to people. And really, most people are quite wonderful, and they all have interesting things to say. I mean, I can remember talking to jockeys for over an hour, not about anything but being a jockey. I mean, I found that fascinating.
How did that happen?
Well, I was at a ballet. I was at Saratoga to watch the ballet.
Yeah.
And I was in like a boarding house, and we all had breakfast together. And the jockeys for the Saratoga track were there, and we started to talk. And it was lunchtime by the time we got up from the table, because they just went on and told me all about what it was like to be a jockey.
Right.
Kept my mouth shut most of the time and said, "Oh," and
Yeah. It's a whole different life.
It really is. And now, one of the lucky things that has happened to me is I joined the Jane Austen Society.
Oh, tell us about
years and years and years ago. And I became more active in it maybe 10 years or so ago. And once you become active in an organization, it isn't just joining. You have to be active, and you have to see people over and over and over. And you do when you're active. And now I have just tons of women friends. I have groups that I talk with people on Zoom. We have book groups, and we have bridge groups, and the world is just so full for me now. I feel like I'm such a lucky person, but I do feel that I've done it. I knew what I wanted. Yes. And I think I learned how to do it. That according to the extroverted introvert, I kept doing it,
Yeah.
even though I was afraid. And finally it just became a habit. I feel as
Woman turned you down at Hunter and you went back.
yes. Luckily, I didn't see the same woman. I mean, I was determined not to see her.
Yeah, but that wasn't good enough for you. So you said to you, when she said that to you, it hurt you. So, and then you thought, I'm worth more than this.
Or I think I thought, you can't give up that easy. You got to try again. You got to this is what you want. Give it another shot. I don't know if I would have given it a third, but I hope I would have. Who knows?
But then you learned about the arts. So you didn't know
Yes.
about the arts growing up.
No. My father bought me a record machine when I was 17, and I would listen to the Andrews Sisters and things like that. Later, after I started going to college, I just became so fascinated with classical music, and I can remember going to a record store near where I worked, and I said, I'm very interested in classical music. Give me some records that I would like as a beginner. And he said, no, why don't you listen to WQXR? I said, no, I want some records right now. And, these were the heavy old 78s.
Yes.
And I can remember the first one he gave me was the Rhapsody in Blue. And then he gave me Scheherazade. And I came back and I said, that's great. I really love I'm listening to WQXR. I said, no, but give me another one. And I think he thought he would really shock me. And he recommended a Prokofiev piece.
Oh.
And I took it home. And I'd never heard music like that before. I listened to it 3 times, and then I thought it was wonderful.
Did he do Peter and the Wolf?
Peter and the Wolf.
I wonder who did Peter and the Wolf, because when I heard that music, it sounded like the wolf, and it just sounded like it was beyond music.
That's right. There's one called The Young People's Guide to the Orchestra. That's great too, where they show you or they play the music of like the horn and the trumpet, and you learn the sound of the instruments.
Oh, I think my granddaughters would love that.
It really is a wonderful piece. And anyhow, so I find that life is very interesting. Things keep happening, and I find that, that sounds interesting. Like right now, I'm on a run of the C-SPAN landmark court cases, the Supreme Court cases. I never thought I was going to sit around 5 evenings in a row listening to people talk about the Supreme Court. But it's fascinating. It really is. Yes. And there are just so many things in life when you go on, and I was watching a program from the Institute of Architects or something like that. And it was all about geometry. And I didn't take so much geometry, but I understood the first program. But after that, I began to lose her. But it was fascinating to see something brand new.
Well, your love of the arts, and you got that because you went to school and you were introduced to it.
That's right.
All right. So I know that you go to the ballet, and I know that you go to is it the opera? You go to
yes. I don't go to the opera as much. I go to the movie operas now. I like that because you can see the expression on the faces. But I give money to the School of American Ballet and to New York City at Ballet and to the American Ballet Theater. And I get to see a lot of rehearsals.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love watching the students as they're learning. And I like to watch anybody or participate myself in any learning experience. Um, it just has meant so much to me that the world is so rich with so many things that if you could only find something that you're interested in a little bit, and then you explore it, and the more you explore it, the more interesting it becomes, and then it leads to something else. You know, my husband used to say that I have 6 month uh, interests. I can remember one day I decided I was going to learn to play the guitar, and but at that time of my life we didn't have very much money, so I would go around to parties and keep saying, I'm going to study the guitar. Does anybody have a guitar? And finally, I got a guitar from someone. And then, but by then, everybody I knew was giving me stuff, a metronome and books. And then I've seen that I was teaching at the college. I realized there must be a course. And there was. And I asked the man, the guitar teacher, if I could join the course as an auditor. And he said, well, of course. And I said, I want to learn to play Granados' Valse Poetique. And he picked up my guitar and he played it for me. And I said, how do you know that? He said, well, I was in Spain and that was the favorite of my landlady. So I took the course for a while and I realized they were so far ahead of me. So after about 4 sessions, I said to him, I don't think I can go on. I just don't. I think I'll go to the high school because there I'll learn slower. He said, well, let me play your favorite piece one more time. And he played. I
Did you
thought
want
that
to
was
play it?
no. When I searched and searched and searched for the music. I used to love going into old music stores.
Yeah.
And I found the music. And you've never seen so more notes in your life. No.
What's
I
the
did
name of it? The music.
the full VALTZ, I guess. POETIQUE. False Poetique.
Okay.
I love guitar music, classical guitar music.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Matter of fact. But you once said to me, I don't know what I said. I wanted you to go somewhere, and you said, I don't want to go there because I don't like that kind of music. I don't listen to that kind of music. It was like
Well,
a Broadway show, or I don't know. I said, you want to go? And you said, nah, I don't listen to that kind of music. And I thought, wow.
no, I'm kind of in the past. I went to many musicals when I was young, and the ones I like, I certainly wouldn't want to see again because I did see one again. And when you see it 30 or 40 years later, it was Oklahoma. And when I saw it again, I thought, that's so silly. You know, of course, operas are pretty silly too when you get down to it, but I do like the music more.
But I agree with you about going to the movies and seeing the opera in the movies because you can
Yes.
see the faces.
Yes. I tape a lot of the operas. Channel 13 on some Sundays at noon play operas. And so I must have a dozen of those over the years. You know, when you've been doing it as long as I have, I have quite an extensive record collection.
What's your favorite opera? If you
Well,
put music on now, what would you put on?
I love Eugene Onegin. I
Oh,
just listened to that last week and I loved it so much that I watched it again the next day. There's something about the minor chords that are in it that are so heart wrenching.
they are.
Yeah.
Minor chord, it really
Yeah.
gets you.
Yeah, the Russian music. I mean, Tchaikovsky is considered light, but there's just something about Tchaikovsky's music that every now and then you can feel a longing in it that
Yeah.
that really gets to me. I love the guy who wrote the Valse Poetique, but I like his music on guitar.
Right.
Uh, he wrote an opera, which I can't remember the name, and that's very good. I love an opera called The Pearl Fishers by Bizet.
I can't believe that. I saw that opera.
Yes, it
Debuted just a few years ago. Am I right?
yes,
I
and
took my niece's daughter. She's like my niece, Kelly. And funny, she called me up and she's a beautiful young woman. She's probably 30 now. And she called me up about whenever the Pearl Fishers, whenever that debut was. And she called me and she said, I'm in Maryland and I want to spend New Year's with you. And we went to the Pearl Fishers. We have
right.
pictures having champagne and oh, that's an interesting opera, isn't it?
Oh yes, I think the reason I like it so much is I love when two people of the same sex sing. So there is a wonderful area in that where the tenor and the baritone sing together. It is just glorious. It's just like in Norma when the two women sing together.
Oh yeah.
It 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 the harmony really gets to me. It's something that when a man and a woman sing together that you rarely get that same quality. Although I love the duets too. I mean, I'm not saying that.
I know what you're saying. So we're gonna this is just such a wonderful thing how you've educated yourself, that you've opened the world to yourself. Anybody can do that. I said to you, it's almost like one of our biggest problems in this world, I think, and it's certainly in America, is we don't educate people and we don't introduce them to some of the things that you can do with your life. Because,
Well, yeah,
you know,
I agree. I think that one of the things that upsets me very much now, I told you how much education means to me, or has even meant to me, is that college has become like a trade school to many people. You should take a lot of STEM courses because you want to get a job.
right.
You know, everything is getting yourself ready to work. It's not, and people can't afford to to go to. I think you should go to college for knowledge and then graduate school for a job. But I know people can't do that, so they're in a bind. You know, that have such terrible debt now, um, and I keep hoping. Yeah,
It's shocking.
and I hope that someday maybe they'll at least go back to having people get 2 years of college for free. Not rich people, but for poor people who can't. I mean, just to bring down their debt. Uh, uh, my cleaning woman, I've given scholarships to her children too. Uh, for every A they got a certain amount of money, and for every B they got a certain amount of money, and they would come to me once a year with their report cards and show me, and I would give them the cash.
How did they do? Well, they did good.
Well, one is a teacher, one was a nurse, one was a teacher, nurse, policeman, and the other one wanted to be an accountant. And the fifth one is just starting school. So she called me and I
Wow.
talked to her. So anyhow, yes, I feel that helping people become educated is an important mission in my life. And you have to let them do it their own way, but I certainly wish it was more academic. I can remember when I was in college, someone said to me, one of the things about going to college, excuse me, one of the things about going to college is that you have a common thing you can talk about to people, that it there is a common conversation you can have. And I'm not so sure that that's true anymore in college.
Message.
Yeah, you know.
I'm not so sure that that's true in college.
No, because I think some people are engineers and they're engineers, and some people are uh, computer people, and and so much of their time is spent on that, the ability to talk to people about mutually interesting things. I suppose they can always talk about sports and things like that, but that's not as interesting to me.
No, it's not, and we learn.
Although I can listen to someone talk about sports for ages and ages. I've done it.
You should
And
watch the ESPN thing on Michael Jordan. It's one of the most viewed documentaries like of all time. It's very, very interesting.
oh, really? Well,
You a link and you'll watch it and you'll enjoy it. It's called, you can get it on Netflix. It's called The Last Dance, and it just talks about him and athletics at that time. And it's just like a view into a world. And it's actually very interesting. My son-in-law, during the pandemic, when I was staying with them, every Sunday night we would watch it. And I couldn't believe how excited I was just about the sense of excellence.
right.
So,
Well,
so you're so right. When you tell me you went to school, you took everything. You took physics. You took every biology. I know you just took every.
yeah. No, I didn't take biology. I took geology.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, because there certainly is an awful lot of information now, and I do read a lot of things about biology. But that's my phone. But
That's okay.
I'm just put it away. But if someone will explain something to me, I'm very happy to learn about it. And um, as I said, I talked to a jockey. I've talked to race car drivers. I once went to a race car track to watch people practice, and I got very involved with a guy who was running the racetrack. And they're very interesting things. And I love when people have any interest. It doesn't have to be mine, but that means that they have a life that's rich, that's other than just work. Sometimes wonder about all the very rich people who work all the time. To me, I have no envy of them at all. Even if they have a lot of money, it doesn't matter.
I understand. I understand. Isn't it interesting? You would think that with all we have, with all these computers, with everything, we could look up June, we could look up and study, like you're saying, Jane Austen. I mean, we could study anything.
That's
Sitting
right.
wherever you are, folks, right now, you could study anything. And it's people they don't know, as they say, they don't know from it. I mean, they're not introduced to what is it, where there's vocation and avocation.
The avocation, yes. I think that there are just so many things in this world. Just give it a try. Don't hole up. Go out and I had a friend who once said to me, "The world doesn't come to you; you've got to go to it."
Yeah.
And that has always been a motto of mine. I really think about all the wonderful people in my life who have taught me so much, not only about the things that I'm interested in, but about what they're interested in. And it just opens up the whole world to you that much more. So that's why I have always been interested in education, and not only for myself but for others. And why I'm so concerned about uh, the kind of questions that they're considering children should learn, that they should be able to answer such detailed questions so that they can pass a test, not so that they'll be interested in reading, but just so they can pass the test. I'm sure that by the time they're done, the last thing in the world they want to do is read, you know.
Well, because it's not for pleasure.
That's right.
My granddaughters seem to look at books and they like that. They like looking at books and their little characters and so forth. But the joy of learning, I don't know that I ever had it. I loved biology of all things when it was introduced to me, and it was so foreign from anything I thought that I would like. But that one of the things you said to me is you were interested in me because I was different, and you wanted to hear all about my life, which I mean, I don't know. It's just different than yours.
That's right. I mean, I've had a life of knowing people who were in the service field mostly, teachers and psychologists and sociologists, people who are world helpers. And when I bought a beach house, all of a sudden I met people who didn't seem to give a damn about helping people. They were magazine writers and they were, all that kind of thing. And I thought that was fascinating. It's just such a different personality, Luckily, they exist, and luckily I exist, is the way I think of it.
Yeah. But I think I was, as you know, I live in Rhinebeck now, and it's such a charming, charming place. And it's almost like it's a set for a movie. I mean, people just walk around, but everybody has some kind of a sign on their lawn. And one woman said Black Lives Matter and, hate has no home here and all this. And the last thing it said is kindness is everything.
Yes.
And I think reaching out as you have and you continue and what you believe in, I think that's your legacy.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's very sweet of you. I think that's why I like you.
But
I mean,
we really love each other. We do. But I love that you gave. Do you still give to these women? The ones who like these scholarships? Is it?
Yes.
I call it copay, but I don't know.
Yes. I mean, they're not the college would choose the ones I had there, but my cleaning woman, I just felt that she had struggled so hard. She came from Ecuador, and when she started with me, she barely knew English, but in time she learned, and she just struggled, and she was such a sweet woman. And I always felt that was the one thing I could do for her, is help her children through college. So, it gives you a good.
Look what they have ahead of them because of their education that you helped with.
That's right. I think it's very hard to worry about being a big adult when you're 18. I mean, you have a viewpoint that can be quite different than mine. You want some fun. You want to enjoy life. You want to meet people, have an exciting time. Well, I never really expected that, just because of my childhood. I had been so lonely in high school, and so I didn't expect the world. But I did think I could learn, and that I felt was important. One of the things also I have learned, another little maxim, is I played tennis for years, and I was good at it. And I got involved playing tournaments. And then all of a sudden one day I said, what am I doing? I'm spending the summer, which I'm supposed to enjoy, and every night before a tennis match, instead of thinking, oh, hooray, I'm going to play tennis tomorrow, I'm dreading it. I'm afraid of it. And I said, I'll never do that again. And now when I play bridge and people want to get better and better all the time, I don't. I'm perfectly happy. I just feel like maybe now I'm an 18-year-old and I say, I just want to enjoy it.
I just want to know what I'm doing and just
That's
fine. I'm good. What does it take to get to that? That's so great. Love that. Do you we have like 10, 15 more minutes. This has just been just as I thought, wonderful. But I know that your daughter and your granddaughter, you have a grandson?
yes.
And how old is he? What's his name?
He's 12, and my granddaughter is 15.
Oh, they're
And so they're much older than your grandchildren.
yeah, they are.
But my daughter is just wonderful. She is so different in a way, and yet she's so much the same.
You're so busy. That's great. You want to get it?
I can hang it up. She's an artist,
Oh, wow.
and I am totally inept. I can remember when I was in high school and I assisted the art teacher, and I was supposed to frame pictures, and she saw me cutting off the edges to make the famous paintings fit the page. And she said, you know, you're not the great painter.
Yeah.
So she's an artist, and my granddaughter is very special to me. She's not only so smart, so curious, but I have always felt that there's a lot of me in her.
Oh,
And that sounds terrible to love someone just because you think they're like you. But
I think that's
there's,
compliment to her for you to see the good parts of you in her. That's
yes, yes. And she is shaping up so nicely. And I have talked to her certainly about my feeling about education, but she does very well in school. And I'm sure she will do well in life too. She's a very outgoing person, and she's fine.
introverted introvert.
That's right. Well, she was the one who said it, and I just can't get over the fact that she understood that feeling so well. So I guess we are more alike than I thought in the past.
Right.
Uh,
And then your grandson, what's his name?
My grandson is Timmy, and Timmy is a kid who is so loving. I mean, he always makes sure that I hold his hand when I get out of the car, and he takes good care of me. And I have a whole wall of pictures over here, and they're all of my family. And I have somewhere Timmy just says things like, "I'll always be there for you," and you know, it's so nice to feel that your grandchildren really want you to come up and see them.
Yeah.
I see them almost every week, and that's a very important thing in my life too. I also see the woman and man who I'm going to marry, and I've been planning their wedding with them, and that's a lot of fun. We now, because of the virus, I take a chair over to the park, like a canvas chair, and we sit on a bench, or there's a wonderful tunnel. So when it's raining, we sit in the tunnel, and we have dinner or lunch together. And she tells me all about her problems in education and where she is and what her issues are. And I just admire her so much because I feel as though I helped create her. And she said that the very first lecture that she attended, she said, "That's the person I'd like to know." And she did. And she initiated it all. I didn't. I really, she just wrote me so many wonderful letters and kept after me even after she graduated, invited me to come in and see her teach. And little by little, I got the message she wants to be friends.
Yeah. Wow.
So, and that's the thing I think that you have to do, or that I think I have to do, is you have to give people the message, hey, I'm willing, I'd like to be your friend. And if they take that message up, they might not be so scared. You
Yeah.
know,
Yes, I think you're right. I was thinking about that last night. A neighbor came by and I want to be his friend. He's a wonderful person. Actually, he wrote a very funny book on how to remember people's names.
oh, really? I can't do that.
And the name of the book is How Could I Forget You? How could I forget you? Meaning, oh my God, I have no idea what your name is. Yeah, but
That's right.
well, I want to be your friend. So I'm so happy. When we did the Zoom, everybody listening, we saw each other and I was like, it's months. It's like got to be 5 months since I've seen you.
That's right. Absolutely. And 5 months since I've had a haircut or I had my teeth cleaned or anything.
Here in Rhinebeck. I did that. But your hair looks really good.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad your audience can't see it.
No, it's great. Well,
Right.
thank you so much. Any books you're reading that you want to share, or any news? Anything you want to
Well, I tend to read the classics. So I read The Leopard and watched the movies. And I, of course, read Jane Austen all the time. And I'm very interested in Trollope. I don't really read modern books. I read some nonfiction, about Hamilton or Adams, things like that. But I really like the classics. And I'm always searching. I figured if they lasted this long, there must be something to them. And also, I think one of the other things about Jane Austen that has been so fascinating for me, other than all the people I've met, is that when you spend so much time learning about another period of time, and she was like the end of the 18th century, the beginning of the 19th century, the world is so different. And you realize that your world is only here temporarily too. It changes. And I can see that in my own life. I'm pretty old now. And my things that existed for me during the Second World War and during the Depression, those are something that it's very hard for somebody who is now living to think were commonplace. And I've one of my little occupations was that I wrote a memoir for my granddaughter, particularly. She had asked me once about, I said something to her about paying rent to my family when I grew up and started to work. And she was shocked that I had to pay rent. And it occurred to me, there must be a lot of things she doesn't know about my past. So I didn't write about my adulthood, but I wrote about what it was like to be a child during the Depression and during the Second World War, what it was like to have ration books, and what it was like to go shopping in little stores like Ralston's, and what it was like to take the train to Jones Beach, which took over 2 hours, and all those kinds of things which are not things that people know anything at all about. I mean, I can remember so well when Roosevelt died. And I can remember incidents like going to visit my grandmother, my grandmother's neighborhood. She was dead by the time I went. And behind every little house, there was this enormous mountain of burning coal. They were called slag piles. And I mean, people were living in terrible conditions. And I would imagine that that's maybe what's going to happen now, too. Who knows?
I wanted to ask you that before we leave. What you think about that, about what's going to happen now?
Well, I hate to turn this into a political thing, but
Well,
I do think that an epidemic is something that will keep recurring. And right now we're on I used the word the other day and I was so shocked because I know the word from reading, but I never have ever used it. And I said, we're on an interregnum now. And I was so shocked at myself for having used a word I never used before. It's a temporary thing. I think I better go and have my teeth cleaned and my hair washed because I figure it'll be back. And not only will it be back, but then we'll be mixing it up with, do you have the virus or do you have the flu? You know, it'll be a very mixed up time. And, you know, the 1918 flu came back for at least 2 years. So the only thing we have going for us is science has moved along. And thank goodness. And, we may get a vaccine. But then you think about the billions of people who have to get the vaccine before there's any kind of herd immunity. So I think we're in for a very difficult time. And I feel so sorry for all the people who have lost their work or who are essentials. I mean, I feel I'm very lucky that I haven't had to go on the subway or the buses. And yet, on the other hand, I know it must be costing the city a terrible amount of money with buses and subways where there aren't riders.
Riding.
It's a very tough time, and I think the whole immigrant thing is horrible right now. I mean, we're all immigrants, and that I think is so inhospitable. But on the other hand, I know we can't. And I think, on top of that, we also have the climate change thing. So that I think all the people who are living on the coasts will soon be immigrants who are into, the Midwest.
Totally.
That's right.
But what you've given to your life, people can do that, June. I mean, what you've given, you've built a really beautiful life for yourself, and you've encompassed things that you never would have known anything about, and you've allowed other people to do that as well. So I just think you're so wonderful, and always, you think I'm interesting. You're far, trust me, you are far more interesting than I am. Do you want to say anything to your grandchildren before we say goodbye?
Oh, I love you and I like you and I think you're kind of great. That's been a line that we've always said to each other. Not only my daughter, I can remember my daughter saying, well, if you love me, you like me. And I said, oh no, there's a world of difference. And I do love my grandchildren. I do like them. And I do think they're kind of great.
Well, I think you're kind of...
And my friends too. I don't know if I love them, but I like them very much. And I think they're kind of great. You too.
You too. Take care. I miss you. I'm going to say goodbye now, everybody.
Okay.
June Shapiro, I don't know what else to say. Mwah. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Right. Bye-bye now.